The phone rang sharply, cutting through the quiet of my small apartment. I glanced at the caller ID, Mark, my editor at the Eldridge Observer. I felt a flutter of excitement, a rush of adrenaline. Emily Harper, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We got a situation in Eldridge. Mark's voice crackled through the line. Something big. You need to get down there ASAP. Eldridge? What's going on? I leaned back in my chair, my heart rate picking up. The name of the town sent a shiver down my spine, conjuring images of quaint houses and whispering pines, but it also carried an air of superstition and ancient tales. There's a kid, Jake Thompson. He's supposedly possessed by a demon. The locals are buzzing about it, and I think it could be a career-defining story for you. Demonic possession? I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. You gotta be kidding me. Is this for real? I wouldn't joke about it, Em. We need someone who can dig deep into the story. You're our best investigative journalist. Can you handle it? Of course I can handle it. When do I leave? Tomorrow morning. And Emily, stay objective. This town has its share of old beliefs. Don't get swept up in the hysteria. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. I could already envision the headlines. Demon in Eldridge. The dark secret behind Jake Thompson's madness. This story had the potential to skyrocket my career, but as I packed my bag that night, I felt a weight settle in my stomach. What would I find in Eldridge? The drive the next day felt surreal. The landscape shifted from urban sprawl to rural charm, the small town of Eldridge appearing like a postcard from another era. As I pulled into the town square, I noticed the quaint shops and the old church with its tall spire looming above. It felt like stepping into a different world, a world steeped in tradition and perhaps something darker. I parked my car and headed to the diner, a hub of local gossip. The bell chimed as I entered, and the warm scent of coffee wrapped around me like a familiar blanket. I slid onto a stool at the counter, catching the attention of the waitress. "What can I get ya?" she asked, her eyes darting toward the newspaper lying open on the counter. "I'm here to learn about Jake Thompson," I said, trying to sound casual. "I've heard some interesting things." Her expression shifted, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "You sure you want to know about that boy? It's not just rumors, you know. People are scared." "Scared? Why?" I leaned closer, my notebook poised and ready. "Strange things happen when he's around. Folks say he's cursed, that he's not himself anymore. Some even think he's possessed." Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would summon whatever darkness lurked in the shadows. "What kind of strange things?" I pressed, scribbling notes furiously. "Things moving on their own, voices in the night. You should talk to the Thompsons. They know more than they're letting on." I thanked her and stepped back outside, the chill of the autumn air wrapping around me. The streets were quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. I headed towards the Thompson house, an old Victorian structure that loomed ominously at the end of the block. As I approached, I noticed the curtains twitching slightly. A woman appeared at the door, her eyes narrowing as she took in my presence. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice tight with apprehension. "I'm Emily Harper, a journalist. I'm investigating the events surrounding Jake. May I speak with you?" She hesitated, glancing back over her shoulder before stepping outside, closing the door behind her. "You should leave this alone. It's not a story. It's our life. I understand that, but people are talking, and I want to tell the truth." I insisted, trying to keep my tone gentle. "Truth," she scoffed. "The truth isn't what you think it is. Sometimes, it's better to let sleeping demons lie." Her warning hung in the air like a dark cloud, and I felt a chill creep down my spine. Yet, the journalist in me couldn't let go. I wanted to dig deeper, to uncover the layers of this mystery. That night, I settled into my motel room, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. I spread my notes across the small table, piecing together the fragments of Jake's story. Just as I began to lose myself in thought, I heard it, a soft whisper outside my window. My heart raced as I glanced out, but the street was empty, the moonlight casting eerie shadows on the pavement. I shook my head, dismissing it as fatigue. Still, unease settled in the pit of my stomach. What had I gotten myself into? There was something about this town, something ancient and unsettling. I had to know more about Jake Thompson and the darkness surrounding him, even if it meant uncovering secrets that had been buried for too long. As I stepped into the dimly lit corridors of Eldridge High, a heavy silence enveloped me. The air felt charged, almost electric, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I approached a cluster of students loitering near the lockers, their laughter fading quickly when they caught sight of my notepad and pen. I took a deep breath, determined to break through their wall of reluctance. "Excuse me," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm Emily Harper, a journalist working on a story about Jake Thompson. Can I ask you a few questions?" The tension in the air thickened. One girl with dark hair, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, shook her head. "We don't want to talk about him." "Why not?" I pressed, sensing that there was more beneath the surface. "He's just a kid, right? Everyone makes mistakes." "Not like Jake," another student muttered, shifting nervously. "He's different now." "Different how?" I felt a sense of urgency. "What happened?" Before anyone could respond, a tall boy with messy hair stepped forward. "Look, it's not our place to say anything. You should just leave it alone." "Why? Because you're afraid?" I challenged, my journalistic instincts kicking in. "Or because you know something you don't want the world to hear?" The group exchanged glances, and I could see the fear etched on their faces. Finally, the girl spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was with us before it all changed. We did some stuff, rituals. Just for fun, you know. But then Jake, he started acting weird. Really weird." "Rituals?" My heart raced. "What kind of rituals?" "Just stupid stuff," she insisted, her eyes darting around as if she expected someone to overhear. "But then things got out of hand. He started seeing things, hearing voices. It felt like we awakened something." I scribbled down their words, feeling the weight of their implications. "Can you tell me more? Where did it happen?" "By the old church," the boy said, glancing at his friends. "We thought it was just a joke, but it wasn't." "Thank you," I said, hoping to coax more out of them. "I need to follow this lead. It's important." The group exchanged wary looks again before dispersing, leaving me standing alone in the hallway, my mind racing. I had to find out more about this church and the rituals they mentioned. Something was lurking beneath the surface of this town, and I was determined to uncover it. Later that day, I made my way to Jake's home. The atmosphere was heavy with an unshakable sorrow as I knocked on the door. It creaked open, revealing a woman with tear-streaked cheeks and eyes that mirrored the depths of despair. She looked at me with a mix of hope and apprehension. Are you here about Jake?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I am," I replied gently. "I'm Emily Harper, a journalist. I wanted to talk to you about him." Her shoulders slumped, and she stepped aside, allowing me to enter. The living room was dim, cluttered with mementos of happier times. Family photos, trophies, and a tattered teddy bear sitting on the couch. The overwhelming scent of something burnt lingered in the air, and I couldn't tell if it was from a recent meal or something more sinister. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "He's not himself. He's been gone for weeks, locked away in that place. I can't help him. I don't know how to reach him. Mrs. Thompson, can you tell me what happened? I want to understand." She sank into a chair, her hands trembling as she clasped them together. "He was always troubled, but it got worse after that night. He came home different. He said things, terrible things. I thought he was just acting out, but then the nightmares started." "What kind of nightmares?" I pressed, my heart racing at the thought of what she might reveal. "Demons," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "He talked about them, about voices telling him to do things. I thought it was just a phase, but then he hurt someone. He didn't even remember it." "Did he say anything about what led him to that point?" I asked, sensing that perhaps the answer lay deeper. She hesitated, glancing at the floor as if it held the secrets of the universe. "He mentioned a group of friends, things they did together. I thought it was just teenage rebellion, but now I fear it was something more." As I left her home, the weight of unspoken secrets hung heavy in my chest. The town's shadows loomed larger, and I could sense that I was skirting the edges of something dark and ancient. I needed to learn more about the church and the rituals to uncover the truth hidden beneath layers of fear and silence. That Sunday, I decided to attend the local church service. The tall steeple loomed over me as I entered, and the congregation was already in a fervor. The preacher, a man with a booming voice and intense gaze, spoke passionately about sin and redemption. His words resonated deep within me, sending chills down my spine. Brothers and sisters, we must not ignore the darkness that lurks among us, he shouted, his voice echoing through the sanctuary. We must stand firm against the evil that seeks to consume our souls. I felt a shiver run down my spine, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. There was something in his tone, something that felt all too familiar. As I scanned the room, I could have sworn I caught a glimpse of a dark figure lurking in the shadows, watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. After the service, I approached the pastor, my heart racing. "Can I talk to you about Jake Thompson?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The preacher's expression shifted, a flicker of concern crossing his features. "Jake, he's a troubled soul. We must pray for him. Do you know anything about what happened to him? The rumors? The rituals?" His eyes darkened, and he looked around, as if ensuring no one was listening. "Some things are better left forgotten, young lady. The past has a way of creeping back, and it's not always what it seems." With that, he turned away, leaving me standing alone in the church, the weight of his warning echoing in my mind. I was on the brink of uncovering something monumental, and I could feel the darkness closing in. The air felt thick with an unsettling energy as I returned to my motel room that night, my mind racing with the day's revelations. The shadows danced along the walls, flickering in the dim light, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just out of sight. I tossed my notebook onto the bed and took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising tide of anxiety. That's when I noticed my belongings were scattered across the room, as if someone had rummaged through them while I was gone. "What the hell?" I murmured to myself, stepping cautiously towards the mess. My heart raced as I knelt down, picking up a newspaper clipping that had been pulled from my stack of notes. It was yellowed and brittle, the headline reading, "Unsolved Murder Shakes Eldridge. Teen Found Dead in Abandoned House." Beneath the headline was a grainy photo of a boy who bore an uncanny resemblance to Jake. "Why would this be here?" I whispered, my skin prickling with dread. I turned to face the window, half expecting to see a figure staring back at me, but there was only the empty street, illuminated by the flickering street lamp. I shook my head and forced myself to focus on the article. The details were chilling. The boy had been found under mysterious circumstances, and whispers of a cult had surrounded his death. As I read, a cold shiver ran down my spine, the pieces of a dark puzzle beginning to fit together. Determined to uncover the truth, I grabbed my jacket and made my way to the town's historical society. The air outside was crisp, and the moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the quiet streets. I felt a strange compulsion to hurry, as if the shadows were beckoning me closer to the heart of Eldridge's secrets. Inside the historical society, the walls were lined with dusty books and old photographs, relics of a time long past. I approached the desk, where an elderly woman sat, her glasses perched on the tip of her nose. "Excuse me, I'm looking for information about a cult that used to operate in Eldridge," I said, my voice steady despite the fluttering in my stomach. She looked up, her expression shifting from indifference to curiosity. "You're not the first to ask about that," she replied cautiously. "Many have come and gone, but few return with answers. Do you have any records? Anything that could explain what happened here?" I pressed, eager to learn more. The woman hesitated, glancing around as if ensuring no one else could hear. There were rituals, dark rituals. The cult believed they could summon spirits, harnessing their power. But it never ended well for them, or for the town. "Do you have names?" I asked, my mind racing with possibilities. "Anything that could connect back to Jake?" As she rifled through a stack of papers, she muttered names under her breath. There was a group, the Children of the Dark. They believed in the Old Ones, ancient beings that could grant them power. "Power?" I echoed, my heart pounding. "What kind of power?" She finally found an old, tattered book and opened it to reveal a page filled with strange symbols and incantations. They sought immortality, but what they found was madness. Some say they still practice in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return. I felt my stomach drop at her words, a growing sense of dread enveloping me. And Jake? Is he involved in this? Some believe he is a vessel, she whispered, her voice trembling. A pawn in a game that extends far beyond our understanding. Vessel? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What do you mean? Those who are chosen can channel the powers of the old ones, she explained. But it comes at a terrible price. As I absorbed her words, the reality of my investigation began to sink in. I wasn't merely chasing a story. I was treading a path that could lead to my own destruction. Shaking off the chilling thoughts, I thanked the woman and stepped back outside, the night air feeling even colder against my skin. Once in my room, sleep eluded me. Nightmares of shadowy figures and whispers clawed at the edges of my consciousness. I lay there, tossing and turning, unable to escape the feeling that I was being watched. Each creak of the old building sent my heart racing, and I finally sat up, gripping the edge of the bed. Get a grip, Emily. I muttered, but the words felt hollow. A dark figure loomed in my mind, a presence that felt all too real. I closed my eyes, trying to dismiss the terror, but the visions only grew stronger. I could see the boy from the clipping, his face twisted in agony, and I heard a voice, a low, guttural whisper that sent chills through my bones. You shouldn't have come here. I shot up, breathless, the darkness around me feeling suffocating. I was in over my head, and the questions I had sought to answer were now entwined with a horror I could hardly comprehend. As I gazed into the shadows, I realized I needed to uncover the truth before it swallowed me whole. The fluorescent lights flickered above me as I entered the psychiatric facility. The air was heavy with antiseptic and an underlying current of despair. I had heard countless stories about Jake Thompson, the boy who had become a local legend, a cautionary tale woven into the fabric of Eldridge. Now I was about to confront him, to see the boy at the center of this demonic storm. As I stepped into the visitation room, my heart raced. The walls were a muted gray, and the small table in the center felt like a barrier between us. Jake sat hunched over in his chair, his disheveled hair masking his eyes. He looked up as I approached, his gaze piercing and unnerving. Emily Harper. I introduced myself, forcing a smile. I'm here to talk about everything. He chuckled softly, a sound devoid of humor. You think you're ready for the truth? What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. People are saying you're possessed, that you're part of the story, he interrupted, his voice low and gravelly. You need to look into your own darkness. Emily, it's connected to me, to this place. My stomach twisted at his words. What are you talking about? I pressed, leaning closer. You need to explain. Jake raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. You think you're the hero here? You're just as much a pawn as I am. They're waiting for you. Who's waiting for me? I demanded, but he merely shook his head. Find the truth, Emily. It's buried deep, just like the secrets of your family. His eyes glinted with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, anger, or perhaps a warning. The conversation spiraled, and I felt like I was grasping at shadows. I left the facility with more questions than answers, my mind racing. What did he mean by waiting for you? My family? I had always considered myself an outsider, someone detached from the town's history. But now, I was beginning to feel the weight of that history pressing down on me. That night, I dove into my family history, scouring old records and dusty archives. Each page I turned revealed a tapestry of darkness, a legacy of involvement in ancient rituals and unholy practices that sent chills down my spine. I stumbled upon a name that sent my heart racing. Abigail Harper. My ancestor. She had been involved with the cult that thrived in Eldridge, a powerful figure who had dabbled in the same dark arts that now haunted Jake. God, what have I gotten myself into? I whispered, my voice trembling in the stillness of my motel room. As I pieced together the fragments of my family's past, a chill swept through the room. Suddenly, objects around me began to tremble and rattle. My laptop screen flickered violently, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest as a voice echoed through the chaos. "Emily, Emily," it called, a whisper that seemed to wrap around me like a cold fog. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice barely above a whisper. The room felt charged with energy, and I could sense something dark lurking just beyond the veil of reality. The lights flickered again, plunging me into darkness for a heartbeat before they returned. I blinked, and in that moment, I saw it, a fleeting shadow darting across the wall, a glimpse of something otherworldly. I gasped, my breath quickening as I realized I was not alone. Panicking, I grabbed my phone, desperately searching for a semblance of normalcy, of safety. My fingers trembled as I dialed a number, but deep down, I knew I couldn't escape this. "Emily," a voice crackled on the other end. It was Sarah, the classmate I had spoken with earlier. "What's wrong?" I stammered. "You have to tell me more about Jake. About the rituals. I think I'm being haunted." "Haunted?" she echoed, concern lacing her voice. "You shouldn't be digging into this. You don't know what you're dealing with." "I have to know," I insisted, feeling the weight of my family's history pressing down on me. "If Jake is a vessel, then what does that make me?" "Emily, stop. This isn't just a story. It's dangerous. You're getting too close." But I could hear the fear in her voice, and it only fueled my determination. I hung up, my mind spiraling into a frenzy of thoughts. I couldn't turn back now. I had to confront whatever darkness lurked in my past. The next few days were a blur of research and sleepless nights. The paranormal events escalated, each night bringing new terrors. Objects flying across the room, whispers echoing my name, shadows lurking just out of sight. I was spiraling deeper into a world I had never asked to enter, but every moment felt like a countdown to something inevitable. "Are you ready to face the truth?" The voice seemed to taunt me, echoing through my mind. And as the shadows grew darker, I realized that the answers I sought were intertwined with the very essence of who I was. I was no longer just an observer in this story. I was part of it, woven into the fabric of Eldridge's dark legacy. The air was heavy with tension as I approached the dilapidated building where the cult's remaining members gathered. It was a nondescript structure on the outskirts of Eldridge, half hidden by twisted trees and overgrown weeds. I parked my car a safe distance away, the crunch of gravel beneath my feet echoing ominously in the still night. My heart raced, a mix of fear and determination propelling me forward. This was it. I had to confront the darkness that loomed over Jake and the town. As I stepped inside, the dim light illuminated a circle of hooded figures, their faces obscured, murmurs swirling like smoke in the air. I hesitated, a lump forming in my throat, but pushed through the door, determined to face whatever awaited me. "Who dares enter?" One of the figures growled, their voice low and gravelly, sending chills down my spine. "I'm Emily Harper," I announced, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know about Jake Thompson. I know what you're planning." A ripple of unease passed through the group, their whispers growing louder, a cacophony of fear and anger. "An outsider should not meddle in things beyond her understanding," another voice warned, sharp and accusing. "Jake is not a vessel for your dark rituals," I pressed, stepping further into the room. "He's a boy in pain, and you're using him as a pawn in your sick games." "Pain is a part of the process," the first figure replied, their tone smug. "Jake is destined for greatness, and we will guide him to fulfill his purpose. You cannot stop what has already been set in motion." I felt a jolt of anger surge within me. "You're wrong. I won't let you do this. I've seen what you're capable of, what your rituals have done to this town." My voice rose, fueled by the memories of the terrified townsfolk I had interviewed, their stories of loss and despair echoing in my mind. "Then you shall face the consequences of your defiance." The figure spat, stepping forward, revealing a glimpse of a twisted, scarred face beneath the hood. "You think you can challenge the darkness? You are merely a flicker in the shadows." I took a deep breath, grounding myself. "You don't know me. I have the truth on my side." The air crackled with tension, and I could sense the dark energy swirling around us, thick and suffocating. "We will show you the truth," the figure hissed, raising their hands as if to summon something from the depths of the night. Ignoring the fear creeping into my heart, I turned to the other members of the cult. "You have a choice. You don't have to follow this path. You can break free from this cycle of darkness." "Foolish girl," one of them sneered. "You cannot comprehend the power we harness. The demon has chosen us, and we will fulfill its will." I knew I had to act quickly. I had read about counter-rituals, ways to disrupt their dark ceremonies. "If you won't stop, then I will," I shouted, my voice echoing in the dim chamber. I remembered the symbols I had drawn in my notes, the fragments of ancient texts I had pieced together. "I won't let you use Jake as a vessel." I started to chant the words I had learned, feeling the power of the ancient language fill the space around me. The cult members recoiled, their faces twisted in anger and fear. "Stop her!" one of them screamed, but it was too late. The words rolled off my tongue, resonating through the air, a counterforce against their darkness. Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the room, and the ground shook beneath my feet. The shadows seemed to writhe and pulse, a tangible force pushing against me. "You think you can fight this?" the scarred figure howled, eyes blazing with fury. "I won't let you take him," I shouted, my voice rising above the chaos. As I continued the chant, the energy in the room shifted, dark tendrils reaching out toward me, threatening to pull me into the abyss. I felt a coldness seep into my bones, a whisper in my ear urging me to give in, to surrender to the darkness that beckoned. But I couldn't falter now. I had come too far. My heart pounded as I focused on Jake, envisioning him free from their grasp, a boy lost but not beyond saving. I had to believe in the light, in the possibility of redemption. "Jake!" I cried out, my voice breaking through the cacophony. "You don't have to be their pawn." The shadows around me wavered, and for a moment, I thought I could see a flicker of light in the darkness. The cult shrieked, the energy in the room swirling chaotically around us. I pressed on, pouring every ounce of hope and determination into my words. But the demon was powerful, and I could feel its presence pushing back against me. I had awakened something ancient, something that would not be easily dismissed. Would I have the strength to see this through, or was I merely a moth drawn to the flame, destined to be consumed? As I stood in the dimly lit room, the air thick with tension and the faint scent of burning sage, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. I had gathered the items for the counter-ritual: salt, candles, and a few pages from the ancient book I had managed to acquire. My heart raced as I centered myself, determined to save Jake, to stop whatever malevolent force had wrapped its claws around him. "Jake, I'm here," I whispered, feeling a rush of adrenaline. I could sense the demon lurking just out of sight, its presence like a dark cloud ready to engulf everything in its path. I steadied my breath, summoning the courage to confront it. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and I could hear a low, guttural growl echoing in the corners of the room. "You think you can stop me?" The voice was deep and resonant, reverberating through my very bones. It felt as if the ground beneath me trembled in response. I clenched my fists, focusing on the ritual. "I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to save Jake," I shouted, my words a challenge against the dark force. "You are a part of this, Emily Harper. You cannot escape your lineage," it hissed, the malevolence in its tone dripping with disdain. Panic threatened to consume me. What did it mean by lineage? In that moment, a flash of memory struck me, a fleeting image of my grandmother, her face pallid and eyes hollow, clutching a diary with trembling hands. It had been tucked away in my home, gathering dust, a relic of a past I had never truly understood. The realization hit me like a slap. My family had been intertwined with this evil for generations. "No," I cried out, forcing myself to focus. I had to remember the teachings of the counter-ritual. I grabbed the salt and began to outline a protective circle around me. "You cannot have him." The demon's laughter echoed, a sound that chilled me to my core. "You think a mere circle can protect you?" You are the vessel I have awaited. You belong to me." I felt a rush of darkness wash over me, a suffocating wave that threatened to pull me under. The shadows danced around me, whispering secrets of despair and power. "Jake!" I screamed, feeling a desperate need to reach him. I envisioned his face, the fear in his eyes, the boy who had only wanted to be free from the torment of his own mind. "You're stronger than this. Fight it." In that instant, I felt a flicker of hope. I could sense Jake's spirit pushing against the demon's hold. "Emily, help me," he shouted, his voice breaking through the veil of darkness. "Hold on, Jake. Just a little longer." I could feel the connection between us, a thread of light weaving through the shadows. I clung to it, using it as a lifeline, but the demon's grip tightened. "You are mine, Emily. Accept your fate." It surged forward, and I felt my consciousness slip, a part of me being pulled into the depths of its malevolence. I screamed, my voice cracking. I could see visions of my ancestors, their faces twisted in fear and darkness, all linked to this demon. The diary, the rituals, it was all a trap laid by generations before me. I hesitated, the weight of my heritage crashing down. The choice loomed before me, to embrace this dark legacy or to fight against it. I refused to be a pawn. I shouted defiantly, summoning every ounce of strength within me, determined to break this cycle. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air, raw and filled with anguish. It echoed through the night, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundation of the world. The walls trembled, and the candles flickered violently as the shadows writhed in rage. "Jake!" I shouted, reaching out into the darkness, desperate to pull him back. But the scream continued, enveloping me, a harbinger of an uncertain fate. As the darkness closed in, I felt the demonic presence pulling at my soul, and I was left standing at the precipice of my decision, with the chilling realization that my heritage was not just a burden, but a terrifying power waiting to be unleashed. The fate of both Jake and I hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of chaos and darkness. If you like the supernatural story, subscribe, like, and comment, and see the next supernatural horror story.